Ek chops down my tree, costs her £500,000, $700,000. It's been 2 years and I can finally post about this. This is juicy, so get ready. Background information. We live in an old and big manor that has been split into 3 attached houses. The houses are about 150 years old and were built around 5 huge giant sequoias which were about 200 years old. In the UK, giant sequoias are very rare, and the 2 in our garden up the house price by about £60,000. We lived next to 2 really nice neighbors, one young couple and one old couple. The story: unfortunately, our old neighbors passed away, so their child and her family moved in. Let's call her Jo. Jo was instantly a pain in the ass. We had been sharing chickens with the previous neighbors and Jo agreed to keep sharing them. However, on her nights she would constantly forget to put them away, so we would have to check them every night anyway. One night her little brats thought it would be funny to open our personal duck pen in the night, which leads to a mass slaughter. Later the chickens went the same way. About 2 years ago there was a storm and one of her sequoias somehow fell over and died. They were distraught, understandably, but from then on, the jealousy started. She would constantly complain about how lucky we were to have 2 sequoias in our garden and how our sequoia was making too much shade in their garden. It wasn't anyway, we just thought it was Jo being a pain. There were a few dry threats like they will chop it down or maybe the next storm will blow it down. Until we came back from a holiday to France to find a huge 6-meter stump and nothing else. I mean, how the duck do you get rid of a 100 feet tree in like 2 weeks? 2 of our old British oak trees had been crushed as well. My mum and sisters were crying, my dad were red in the face, and we had no evidence Jo had done it. She claimed that there had been a storm and she had to get rid of it. We had a security camera at the front of the house, but you can get in the back if you go through a few fields. We then were given an £8,000 bill for damages to her property, and to have the tree chopped up and remove the wood alone would have been worth a small fortune. We had lost all hope and 2 weeks had passed when my dad came running in from the garden. We had put up a wildlife camera a few months ago and had caught everything. We got a lawyer on the phone and started our revenge. We got a tree surgeon out who said it was an original specimen brought into the UK in 1860 along with the 2 that were in Elveston Castle Country Park. There were 218 around the UK but only 60 now. He also told us to call out an engineer because the roots might be in the foundation, so when they rot it could damage the house. Turns out we would need to redo the foundations. Then we took Jo to court and sued them for damage to property, trespassing and lots of other smaller claims. The tree would cost $250,000 to have another sequoia that was 200 years put in and looked after. It's basically impossible, plus the damage to the foundation which was $200,000 and the 2 oaks which were another $25,000. So with the smaller claims, it went to about £500,000, $700,000. They had to move out. And we have now paid off the mortgage, done a lovely loft and kitchen conversion, and have basically done up the house and garden, as well as plant a 60-year-old sequoia tree in the back garden. We also had our kitchen counter and table made from the old sequoia. We now have a new lovely family living next to us who we share chickens, ducks and pygmy goats with. They're very nice and I make a fortune babysitting their kids. Sorry for the essay. I'm working on the spag but I'm dyslexic. Please tell me where the errors are. Edit. Many of you wanted to hear about the court case, but she didn't stand a chance, and as soon as we revealed the footage to her and her lawyer, she gave up. The people who cut the tree down gave us the countertops for free as a sorry. They were truly sorry. The neighbors had a second home, so they just sold the house and moved back to their smaller one. We feel bad for the old neighbors, but we do visit their graves because they were like family. Also, there was a storm but the sequoia was unharmed. That's what the video showed. Redditor's reaction. Story 2 after. Redditor 1. Hot damn. Imagine being in debt for the rest of their lives because of jealousy. I assume they had to sell their house to pay it off? Redditor follow up. Whether they sold or not to move out, have to admit that karmic justice hit them hard for destroying trees that wasn't even on their property. It was technically on Op's family property, not X, and then having the audacity to send Op's family a bill. That Ek thought her jealous was worth it until the court system stated otherwise and made her pay up. Edit. Who can blame Op's father for doing happy dance and discovering that video? That Ek truly thought they got away with murder and everything until that video showed up. Redditor 2. The entitlement of M is terrifying. And the cheek to stick you with a bill. Jesus Christ, lucky you had a wildlife camera. Presumably you could have found the tree surgeon they hired to do it and worked backwards from there, as I don't think regular dickheads could fell and remove 100 tons of sequoia in 2 weeks. Redditor follow-up: isn't the tree surgeon on the hook too for carrying out the work without the landowner's permission? Redditor 3: excellent revenge. Genuine question: would you like help with the spelling errors? Story 2: short me $70,000 in violation of our written agreement? It'll cost you $1.8 million. Edit 1: thank you for the awards. I appreciate them all. Disclaimer: the names in some of the situations have been changed to protect the identities, but the dollars and general nature of the situation is completely true. Background: a year out of school in the early 1990s, I procured a job as a business analyst for a large, family-owned tech company. This business was located in the booming heart of technology at the time and was very profitable. As tech took off over the next decade, the company thrived and remained family-owned. What was a rich family and company became exceedingly wealthy with a valuation net worth in the high 9 low 10 figures. The family that owned it was quite neurotic, very moody, and had a reputation as very ruthless greedy when it came to financing, deal-making, employees, etc. I truly believe this is what held them back from ultimately becoming a household name as a company. As I progressed in the company, I gained more and more face time with the owners. I worked on some projects directly with ownership that really paid off and gained me even greater access to their inner circle. Now, like a lot of people at the time, and particularly those who worked in tech, I was heavily invested in tech stocks. I discussed some of my investments and gains with ownership as casual conversation, though investing had nothing to do with my role in the company. That is until one day in late 1999 when the owner came to me and asked me if I would invest some of his personal money. He wanted me to take big risks to see if they would pay off using $1 million of his personal money. I was a bit hesitant, but still being in my late 20s and wanting to prove myself, I said I would. I asked for a written agreement where they acknowledged this wasn't my role in the company, was a personal matter between the owner and me, and to document my compensation for this side arrangement 20% of all profits. Around this same time, and by working in the industry, I started to notice the weakness associated with a lot of tech companies. They just weren't living up to their hype and stock price, and some seemed like they were starting to run out of money. I had no inside information, just a strong sense of which companies were struggling based on my work in the business. Based on this sense, I started using both my money and the owner's money to short tech companies just after the new year in 2000. For anyone unfamiliar with shorting, it means if the value of a stock decreases, the value of the investment increases. I had a few long positions, but my overall position was very short. Since the owner wanted big risk and big reward, I used his money and obtained leverage or margin from the financial institution where I maintained both his and my trading accounts. The accounts were separate, but both under my name again. I documented this and gained consent. Well, both my account and his suffered some moderate losses in the first 2 months of 2000 before the bubble began to burst in both accounts, but his in particular began to skyrocket. Ownership's pettiness. In June, the company began to suffer a downturn. We were still profitable, but since we provided tech services and products, we were not immune to weakness in the broader market. I had not informed the owner of my short strategy. He came to me one day and asked how his money was doing, saying he suspected it was way down like the general market. To his surprise, I informed him that while we still had some money tied up in options, puts and shorts, but based on the positions I had closed, there was $1.35 million in cash sitting in the account that belonged to him. Again, I still had a bunch of open positions which, if memory serves, were worth about $1 million on that date, but the positions I had closed had yielded $1.35 million in cash just sitting in his account, which was in my name. The owner, either through ignorance or lack of attention, said, "Great, $1.35 million. Fantastic work in this down market. Will you please wire it to me?" I responded that I would, but would be taking my 20% of the $350,000 profit, or $70,000, before wiring him the $280,000. I also reminded him I still had open positions that had yet to pay off or close, but I didn't state the amount. He, once again, appeared not to understand or comprehend the open positions statement, but instead totally focused on and became incensed about my rightful claim for $70,000. He went on and on about how times were tough, I should be grateful for a job, particularly at my young age, and the entire $350,000 was necessary for him and the company. I knew this wasn't true based on my position within the company. Worse, this was my first time personally experiencing the greedy and corrupt nature that served as the basis for ownership's reputation. The revenge. Now comes the revenge. Since, after 2 separate conversations, the owner didn't seem to grasp that the open positions would yield at least some income, and thus additional profit, I decided not to mention it again. I sent him back the entire $1.35 million and continued to manage the open positions to the best of my ability. And here's the kicker, the owner never brought it up again. He seemed to think the $1.35 million payment was the entire value of the account and never understood or remembered that open positions still existed. He never asked for records, tax documents or any time of audit or financials. Given the fact that he was dishonest with me, I didn't feel the need to disabuse him of that notion. Ultimately, after a bit more net gain, I covered all of the shorts and exercised all of the options puts in this case for an additional $1.8 million. I worked for the company for 3 more years and owner never asked about it during my tenure, after I gave notice, or since. I know it's a bit crass and even shady AF, but given his dishonesty with me over the $70,000, I felt justified in keeping the additional $1.8 million. I paid taxes on the gain long-term cap gain, and went on my way with a fantastic nest egg. Nobody has asked about it since and I have only told the story to a few people and even then only after the statute of limitations passed. The final ironic cherry on top of this sundae is that during my remaining 3 years I gained greater influence with ownership and position within the company because they considered me loyal for giving the $1.35 million back and not making too much of a stink about the $70,000 profit. Little did they know I got the better of them. The company eventually folded due to family disputes, but my understanding is that ownership walked away in very good financial position. They likely could have been a much better and greater company had they not practiced the same dishonesty that they showed me with their vendors, clients and employees. Thanks for reading and hope you enjoyed.